And we're live. Hello and welcome to a special episode of ALLin Live, where I will not be predicting every coin in crypto. That's clickbait. I wanted you to focus on the coins that actually matter, which include Hex and PulseChain, as well as PulseX. And so we're going to be talking a lot about game theory. And along with that, I want to say, as your crypto therapist, I have to tell you that this is not financial, medical, or therapy advice. Do your own research, buy your own DeLorean, and fly yourself back to the future like I do to brag about how you're always right. So today we're going to be reviewing what predictions those in the Hex community have gotten right. We're going to be going through my massive list of all the things that I'm predicting here in the future. And this is basically, these are major insights that I haven't necessarily had a chance to build a business out of or to, find people to write the code for. But there are a lot of things that we're gonna, I think, discover today about Hex and Pulse in the ecosystem by really exploring what the predictions have been and what they will be. And so with that being said, I'm gonna run a special intro here to establish myself as the owner of a DeLorean who can not give financial advice.
Who's there? This guy. What's up, Richard Hart? You're up. And you're all hard. That's why your favorite fake brilliant billionaire investor's here. Listen, ALLin reached out to me. And he was like, dude, you look a lot like Richard Allen when you're sitting on a throne with a candelabra.
Thank you for the kind words.
Fantastic. But which came first? The chicken or the comas? I think the comas, because you're a tres comas individual, Richard Hart. You're a guy who fucks in the best possible sense. And Maddie wanted me to say, thank you for inventing Hex, which allowed him, the therapist, to buy a DeLorean, apparently, and to promote his future self and mental health on YouTube. Here's the deal. I like people that are nice to other people. I like people saying thanks to other people. So thank you, Richard Hart. On behalf of ALLin, you're the human equivalent of a car with doors that open like this or like this. Yeah, Richard Hart.
Great Scott! 2021? Do you know what this means? It's time to buy and stake Hex. We can all be as rich as the original Bitcoiners. My name is ALLin. Follow me on YouTube. Let's go! Hex is a coin that allows you to create digital scarcity. The way that you do that is by locking up the coins and earning interest. That rewards saving instead of borrowing from your future self. It's even good for your mental health.
Here, you ain't ready, duck and cover, get inside my dick. Now when it comes to market composition, you don't gotta worry. You gotta take the number one spot in a hurry. 555, hit the return button and make it go live. Liquidating shit bags, you've been leverage trading, you got a monkey on your back. 5555, hit the return button and watch it go live. Though we kill them with kindness, we're not very nice. We building lots of bridges, but they made out of ice. We building all these stupid bridges, they made out of ice. We can melt them down in the quickest. Talking shit will get you sweet. In the moment you admit you were wrong, throw you a lifesaver, shaped like a hexagon. We'll shower you with digital hugs and kisses. We shilling out forgiveness. We never linger on a vibe that's wrong. You'll feel better with a 3-letter hat and shirt on. I wanna see you dancing with the hexagonation. Let's go.
Shout out to all the familiar faces in the chat: Bitfinesse, Gary, Pulsicano, Craig, Brissology. It's It's really great to have you all here, and that's why I want to get right into it and start talking about all these predictions that I have to share today. So the first one's going to be pretty technical. So if you don't understand everything that we're about to go over, you can learn more if you're new by going to hexcontract.com. Goes to a playlist that I made that explains what is Hex and a little bit about what is crypto and what the community is all about. And so that's something to definitely check out. But to get into this list, now this list is not really in any particular order, but again, this is a list of predictions that I've been keeping, kind of big ideas that in some cases are very technical that can, are possible basically. And so, and mostly would benefit the Hex ecosystem. There are going to be some aspects of game theory that we talk about today that it's unclear how it would affect the Hex ecosystem, but that's even more reason to share it and for people to understand, for example, about wrapped stakes, what the implications are and where we're going to have to draw the line. So, so for example, one thing that can be programmed into Hex is what I would call money printers that you can't shut off. And so people could actually extract interest along the way based on wrapping stakes. So I'm going to bring up, it's kind of like a Medium article that I haven't finished writing. And just from the title, though, we're going to be able to understand a little bit more about what I'm talking about here in these different breakdowns of how wrapped stakes can be applied. So Staker app, which shout out to Staker app, one of the most, I would say, exciting companies in the world right now, just became the greatest provider of smart contracts on Ethereum. And so that is a really expensive position to be in. And it's because there's such a strong use case with Hex. And that's something, that's a prediction that many people got right, was basically betting on Hex. But now we're going to dive a little bit deeper and talk about what is the best, I would just call it kind of like an all-in-one game theory for wrapped Hex stakes. Because at the end of the day, whoever deploys the most popular smart contracts that interact with Hex, such as a Gnosis safe that allows you to transfer the ownership of staked Hex. And that's really where we get started going down this rabbit hole, is when we understand that a normal crypto wallet that's not multi-sig, not multi-signature, is limited in what it can do. And the reason why we don't have transferable stakes already from the base code of Hex is because you have recorded your private key and started a stake, and now there's no way really for you to prove that you destroyed that private key and didn't keep a copy for yourself to somebody who doesn't know you. And that's the whole point of crypto, is to kind of, interact in a way where we don't have to trust strangers, but we know that we're getting this digital scarcity and this value out of a transaction. And so it simply, so for example, I have some physical wallets that are built inside of a copper coin, and it's like a 1 ounce coin. So it looks like a silver dollar or something. But there's a private key engraved on it. It's called a cold storage coin. And there's a company that makes it. I'm not recommending these as where you should put a bunch of money into, but it illustrates that I can, even if I write down 12 seed words and then, sell that piece of paper to somebody, I'm not going to really be able to sell it for the value of whatever the stakes are, because nobody is really going to trust that I don't still have a copy of that, because the incentives are all wrong. My incentive would be, if somebody's willing to give me money for it now, then, the crummy thing to do would be to keep a copy of it. But we just don't really consider that common or normal, because people are just interested in buying Hex that is definitely owned by them and no one else. And so So what the Gnosis wallet technology does, which is the same type of wallet that the founder of Ethereum, Vitalik, he upgraded his setup to that. But hexagons, many of us have staked in MetaMask, which does not allow us to transfer the stakes. It's a non-multi-sig, basically, wallet. And so we've staked to that for 10, 15 years, right? New stakes will be able to be created in the future where you're using this multi-sig technology. And so StakeWrap is already using that as the default in their wallet. If they've paid for you or you've paid and they've paid some too, to get you a smart wallet, which is actually a safe which is a smart contract that's deployed on the Ethereum network and costs a lot of money to create because of gas fees, because Ethereum is so overloaded and not working right. And so, but imagine now with PulseChain coming out very, very soon. And so what we're predicting here is that StakeWrap is going to probably be the main place to go to get your wrapped stakes. And they are creating a market for this. It's important for us to understand really what the implications are on the game theory of everything, for us to debate it in public and, to tell each other when we think we're wrong or right. And this isn't necessarily just a review of this topic, but I want to set the stage for what I'm talking about, because once you start wrapping stakes, you're starting to commit to something kind of as a community, and whoever's validating, Hex at a social level, because hexagons who have been following this channel for a year understand that crypto is not just enforced by code, which it is. It's not just enforced by proof of work or proof of stake, but it's also enforced by social layers. And that's why we can see when the social layer splits, that's what a hard fork is, like with Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum Classic and stuff. Thanks to Bifness for the $50 super chat. Huge shout out and immense thank you to all the streamers putting in the most valuable work explaining the greatest asset known to man. It's extremely convenient to help new users. Thank you. My pleasure, my friend. And so, like I was saying, once we start wrapping stakes, that's kind of opening Pandora's box a little bit. But what it also allows, if there is a tradable share market, it really depends on what the initial rules are of that and how that literal code that's launched in order to enable this, the one that gets adopted the most is going to really determine how that affects the broader Hex market. And so just like when Hex was launched, before it was launched, a lot of time and energy was spent to model out what the user behavior would be and how the system, how to set the levels just right. And so I think that's also probably required for the wrapped Hex stakes. And so I guess my first prediction here is that there is going to be a second emergence of debates on this, because I remember originally when it was first discussed, when people were explaining that it's theoretically possible and trying to get people to write the code and really, I remember seeing out, many hours worth of chats that were written between some devs and Richard, and I wasn't able to verify that it was really Richard, but it sounded like there was a lot of discussion, even not in the public. And then we had a lot of debates here on Quant Gang. I did individual shows about it and everything. And so I think that this is going to come back again in 2022. I think it's going to be much farther along in terms of the technology, because deploying smart contracts and Gnosis safes and multi-sig wallets on PulseChain is going to be very cheap. Right now, it costs about between $10 and $100 or more to create a staker smart wallet on Ethereum, that cost is going to go down to a penny or to 10 cents. And so 2022 is going to be the year of the smart contract and the better security that's provided, right? By the, there's also security advantages to doing multi-sig wallet, because if you think that you got compromised, then you can just sign the wallet over to yourself on another address, basically. And I've played around with that just a little bit. It's actually it's not as easy through, or over the summer it wasn't as easy as you know, as it really should be on the Gnosis app. The Gnosis app on your phone like really kind of sucked at that point. But hey, I remember when MetaMask launched on mobile for the first time, and that doesn't seem like that long ago, but it was about a year and a half ago now, over the summer. So so we're gonna probably see a lot of debates, and then it's gonna be really interesting in 2022 to see what the implementations are of these wrapped stakes. And so in one example, I could see somebody creating a perpetual T-share. And so this would, I would also maybe call this perpetual principal trademark. You know, like I'm the first person that I know of who is really explaining now how it is possible to not only time lock your hex for 15.2 years, but to time lock it forever. And so there, as we go down this rabbit hole, there are going to be some things that once you realize you can do this with smart contracts, then you're going to start to ask yourself, well, where is the line going to be for what the hex community really recognizes? And so, for example, if I can stake hex inside of a Gnosis safe, I can also program on another rule onto that. And the other rule could be that whenever I end the stake, it doesn't automatically, but it runs a function, because that function is tied to that wallet. So it's almost like limiting the options of the wallet itself, or the Gnosis safe itself, and saying, you know, if you're going to, and so I think you'd have to launch it out there as an actual separate contract, that was like attached to a wallet. But at the end of the day, on Ethereum, you're able to program to be able to say, I want to restake the principal. And in order for me to even unstake it, what I'm going to have to do is pay the gas to restake the principal. And so that's a really interesting twist on things, because when advanced users get into hex, and when hex, you know, turns you into a millionaire in crypto, you know, you're gonna still be asking yourself, like, where are the failure points? Like, how can this be better? And hex is already good enough, right? But when we're looking at our own human behavior, you know, one question is, well, do I want to allocate 5% of my portfolio to generational wealth and have a money printer that I can't shut off, and it just spits out interest every however long the term is, but it's actually unable to be unstaked? Because in this Gnosis wallet that we've created, there are those rules attached to it that say, you know, if you're going to end stake, then these are, you know, the instructions that are going to be sent to the blockchain. And so it would be no different, you know, than a DAO, or you know, than some of these other implementations of smart contracts, where you're attaching more rules to it. And another prediction that I think is that the types of rules that you start attaching to these things could be more and more complex, because hex really is so much more advanced than any other digital store of value, and because it's about to be working on an actual decentralized world computer, right? Ethereum was great for that. They attracted all the devs in the world that matter, and then they broke it with their own game theory messing up, with the fees being too high, and it's a security racket from the miners and the people who are storing value there. The ETH network has been attacked and taken over by rich assholes who don't want it to be a world computer anymore if they have to give up it being a store of value, and it can't be both. You can't have digitally scarce block space on a decentralized computer and have that survive for very long. Like, it's really incredible that it survived this long, and it's like feeding off of this like NFT nonsense, but it really helps you understand the people who are making money out of thin air have the highest marketing budget. And so literally the way to save people from themselves is to offer something that is a leap forward better, right? In technology, and to be patient with the adoption that's happening organically, where streamers such as myself. And so that's another prediction we're going to have, is that there's going to be more and more marketing that happens by OGs. OGs are going to pay marketing teams, but they're not going to misallocate resources because they're not really in that much of a rush. And the amount of resources that they're able to leverage is going to be a function of how high the price of Hex goes. And they're going to need to sell less and less Hex that's coming out, on a periodic basis than they would have to if the price wasn't pumping. So literally there's going to be an epic feedback loop at some point between the OGs who, it's a rounding error for us to, buy a billboard, or to, there are really good ways to waste money with marketing and advertising, like getting lied to by Facebook about who they're showing their ads to, and Google, and all the, there are plenty of scams that will take your money and pretend like they're advertising for you. But I think Hexicans are going to be special in this regard because they also don't have an incentive to lie. They don't have an incentive to use necessarily cheap tricks, but that doesn't mean that we can't be effective. And thank you so much for CNDB here in the chat. Susie Q, wishing you a fabulous holiday as well. Right on. Shout out to everybody who is sending their regards and making positive comments here. Yeah, hit the like and subscribe button if you dare. So, so with wrapped stakes, so OGs will be financing more marketing, and really the type of wealth creation that's happening is kind of a snowball effect. And at the same time, there's still going to be price volatility. And so that's another thing to predict, and it's in the game. Bitcoin has not escaped its own velocity problems or volatility problems for its size. So people still consider it to be highly speculative, and that is definitely true for Hex because speculators are doing so well. But there's different kinds of speculation. There's types of speculation where you trick yourself into something that's good for yourself, or where you're incentivized, to do something that is so unnatural for humans, which is to delay gratification on such a rigid schedule as is possible when you can literally reach into the fourth dimension and pin your savings down where you want it to be, and then watch the massive price appreciation take care of the rest. So with that being said, having a perpetual principal machine, or having that as an option when you're staking, that's not going to be right for everybody. Not everybody's going to do that. But I think it's super valuable to the space because it also, it does what we are saying we're going to do, which is only sell the interest. And those of us who have not appreciated the only sell your interest part, that will come with time, because once the numbers get so big, then the interest really is even beyond your wildest dreams, right? And I'm not saying I'm there yet, but I'm looking at the stages of like hex development that people are going through based on their wallet size, which is not the only thing that determines your development, nor should it be. It's really hard for some people to deal, for a lot of people to deal with sudden wealth syndrome. But at the end of the day, you either go through all your hex or you don't, and you time lock it, and then the problem can keep occurring if you continue to maintain your wealth, whether you have it time locked or not. But I think, I've heard a lot of other members in the community talk about their own sudden wealth experiences, and sometimes it, wears off over time. Some people find different ways to cope with it and to adjust. But the adjustments are going to keep coming. And so when I look at sharks, when I look at whales, when I look at how they're coping with life, what they're doing with their time, how they're taking care of themselves, right? Then that motivates me to want to learn from that, but to also share my experience for how I'm coping with it. And that's part of the reason for Hex Therapy Live. I want to do more content on sudden wealth syndrome where we're actually interviewing people and talking about the process, because I think I've done some good rants on it, but we need more examples in person. And so that's another prediction, is that we'll be taking a deeper look at sudden wealth syndrome here on Hex Therapy in 2022. And okay, so another thing you can do actually with wrapped T-shares is, technically, and I don't want to go into this too much, technically you could create continuous daily interest option. So you could, so the reason why we don't want to go into that too much is because in the real world, whenever you can scrape off interest, it's not really good. It hasn't been good for projects. And whereas I think if it was done right, then it would be behaviorally incentivizing, and that would be a pumpamental. But as it stands right now, I'm not convinced enough. And so again, that's why I don't want to go into it too much. But if you're having thoughts on that, if you understand what I'm talking about, if you want to like discuss the game theory, then we might find a good medium for that. And shout out to Sandra. That'd be great. Yeah. We all have to prepare for sudden wealth syndrome. Even if you don't realize it, but if you're in Hex, if you've put $100 or $1,000 in Hex already, then yeah, you need to ask yourself periodically, like, what am I doing to prepare for the mad gains that could come? And what ratio should that be with focusing on the rest of my development, right? And shout out to you, Craig, for being a member of the squad on YouTube, the different categories that just got created. So, okay, so wrapping stakes, I think tradable shares actually like cannibalizes the buy pressure. And we've argued about that a lot on the channel, and I know more people now that agree with me than before, but not everybody's on the same page. Some people think, oh, as long as you pay in Hex for these tradable shares, then you're launching more Hex out there, Quattro Cinco. But no, I don't think that's right. At the end of the day, you're cannibalizing your buy pressure, and sometimes that's okay, right? Sometimes that's gonna take care of a whale who would otherwise be dumping or something like that. But we need to be really careful with tradable shares, and we need to add more rules on top of that that will balance things out a little bit. Okay. I mean, the no emergency end stake thing is cool, and that's like, it needs to have that to function, not even like just as a cool add-on that's optional. Because if you can EES, then you could bring the value of a 15-year stake down to 0, and then you really don't want to be trading it, right? You're destroying the value at that point. And so, but that is another example of how you see that, the code that Firebun is proposing and has written, like that demonstrates what I'm talking about with adding more rules on. So a rule is you can't EES. Well, it's not changing the hex code because that's time locked in 2019 in an Ethereum block. And so there's no moving code base to argue which fork is which. So hex doesn't have that problem. But we're not changing the hex contract. But we are kind of disabling a feature for these wallets that Staker app gives this power to be able to have tradable shares. And yeah, so that's really interesting that Staker app could release something that does allow you to EES along with tradable shares, but that would be pretty silly because then the tradable shares could go to zero and people would not be happy with that. So that would almost be considered like a bug. Interestingly enough, so you can program on rules for how this wallet, this Gnosis safe, can interact with this hex contract. And so that's how you would get this perpetual principal type of wrapped hex stake. And that's not something that I've heard from Staker app. That's something, as far as I know, I came up with that and started talking about it in person with people a few months ago. But this, and I could call it different things. I could call it, a perpetual T-share or a perpetual principal, or, it's not auto renewing, but it's giving the rule, you have to pay the gas to restake. You have to restake this amount if you want to end stake what you've got. And then you could build in the rule basically that people could good account it or not. And you'd probably say not. But then it'd be interesting to also have kind of a public function that gets run, or that could be run if you didn't want it to bleed out or be able to bleed out. But if you didn't allow it to bleed out, then that does change kind of the available supply in the future. Because if it becomes popular, if there becomes a one-tap app, if it gets built into Apple Pay or something that probably isn't going to happen, but if it did, if Hex became easier than Bitcoin to buy, then it would matter if people were just automatically buying the thing that you cannot sell the principal, and then that would decrease, sell pressure in the future, because people would only be selling interest instead of saying that they're only going to sell interest, and then their life circumstances could change. And that happens to a lot of people. A lot of people change their lifestyle, and then they want more and more of the same thing. They get addicted to any aspect of things that you can spend money on, and drugs, the rush of spending money, luxury goods, looking good in front of other people, spending money on alcohol or clubbing and partying, $15,000 tables, and all this nonsense. Golden yachts. Sorry, we'll let that one slide. That's a necessity, right? So as a community, we are going to have to decide which rules are allowed to be programmed in and which are not, which I think that is going to be a really interesting battle and debate. But I'm not scared about it. This you're not going to find anything here that has anything to do with FUD, because it's really clear to me, because I'm dealing with Hex and the people in Hex, and I've seen how actual decentralized finance works. There's a reason why the origin address is controlling 90 or 95% of the coins. There's a reason why Richard Hart has exactly the amount of influence that he does in the space, and he lets other people have influence in the space. He's not the only Hex streamer. He shouts out to streamers such as myself, Discourse Syndicate, Hexologist, look into Hex, all these all these different content creators. And that's something we're going to be further promoting in the Hex conference, which I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, because that's another part of what I'm predicting and a lot of the awesome content that I'm dropping today. So we've been talking for the past 30 minutes about what it looks like when we start wrapping hex stakes, when we have these encapsulated T shares is another term that was used if you're going back through the channel and looking at old episodes to try to make sense of what the arguments have been, where Kareem stands versus where I stand on the impact on buy pressure that this would have, because there is going to be a discount based, probably somewhat based on time, but it's going to be whatever the market wants to pay for a Quattro Cinco stake, but you're not going to probably get a tradable Quattro Cinco stake that is more expensive than getting one yourself. That's not in this weird staker wallet smart contract thing, right? So, so whatever that premium is that people are getting, you know, whatever that bonus is that people are getting because people are willing to sell to them below the value that they would be able to get it themselves now, that's going to create, you know, that premium discount thing depending on which side of the trade you're on, and that's going to I think really eat into the buy pressure because the people who have wrapped stakes who want to have their cake and eat it too, I think there's a lot of problems with tradable stakes, you know, from the human level, you know, and kind of the game theory relates to people and how they stick to their behaviors or not. And so if you give people, right now, you don't have the option to earn interest in Hex and not wait the full amount of time, whatever it is that you're getting that amount of interest for. But in this new version of Hex operating within wrapped stakes, you are able, like I talked about before, when I have the physical coin or I have the 12 words written down and I cannot prove that I don't have a copy of it, well, having a smart wallet, you kind of can prove that you didn't keep a copy of it because you're able to transfer the ownership of that Gnosis safe. And so that complicates things a little bit. And it, again, I think it buys it, it eats into the buy pressure because it's creating this kind of like weird past futures market or like you know, these Quattro Cinco stakes that were created, they were wrapped. Even if we can trust the code, we can't trust ourselves holding on to these things because we're always going to be able to sell them at a discount. And that discount is the insane ROI that we could have gotten if we had diamond hands, if we didn't give ourselves the option to sell. So giving people the option to sell and rewarding them based on doing a max length stake, that does interact with the Hex game theory. Now, I'll play the devil's advocate, or, you know, the devil's like fixer, and I will, you know, I'll go ahead and say the actual interest that people are getting is, it's a nice force multiplier, but it's not really the end of the world or the end of Hex or anything if that part of the game theory gets screwed up, you know, by a few percent, because we're dealing with millions of percent from the price appreciation, from the fact that during the whole first 2 years of Hex existing, people have been doing these hard stakes, these non-wrapped stakes. And so the early adopters who've gotten so rich, like, maybe they can share the wealth a little bit. Maybe this is going to even the playing field a little bit out. Maybe this is going to be part of leaving meat on the bone, which is my favorite quote from Richard Hart in the first Hex conference, when he said the reason why they didn't allow people to do stakes longer than 15.2 years was to leave meat on the bone. He said, what do you mean? A 352x in 1 year is not good enough, right? And since then, now we're dealing with another 25x on top of that, at least. Or if you bought the dip after the Hex conference last year, you're up 100x or more from where you, because I remember buying it a third of a penny after the Hex conference when Hex was at in between like 1.2 and 1.5 cents or 1.7. I mean, it was bouncing around a lot. So that's all I'm saying is messing with the buy pressure. I mean, that sounds like a big deal, but maybe it's not that big of a deal, especially because you're still just attracting new people. But I don't want to hear people say, without me arguing with them, that it doesn't interact with the buy pressure. We need to admit that it does cannibalize the buy pressure, but that maybe there's plenty of buy pressure, and that maybe not being able to end early has kept people out of Hex. You know, I would still maintain that it's better for people to change, you know, like instead of being allowed to still be bad at saving, to, you know, that actually the greatest part of Hex is that it forces you to, you know, only get the mad gains, the maddest gains by time locking and not being able to reverse that time lock and not being able to sell it to anybody. I would say that's definitely a feature, not a bug. And the community is going to have to decide and kind of deal with whatever gets decided, you know, and live with it, right? Because there are all these things now you can program into Hex if we're doing, you know, if we're doing wrapped stakes. So a lot of people were against it in the beginning. I was against it. Richard didn't have an opinion. Now he said, you know, he hasn't said a lot about it, but he said that he's not worried about it, and I believe him. The more I've thought about the game theory, like it's not going to ruin things in Hex, but it will have an impact. And if adoption continues to increase like it is, and if PulseChain comes out and, you know, 1 million crypto users suddenly get into Hex, and that 10x's the number of people that we have in Hex, and, you know, since the last Hex conference, we've like maybe 2 to 5x'd the community, somewhere in there. So even like being conservative, we would be talking, if we 10x'd the community, because we vampire attack all of Ethereum and we take all their value and we eat their lunch money, right? Yeah, that's, you know, that's going to bring the users. This is a part of what a vampire attack is basically taking all the users by giving them a better technology. And PulseChain, I can tell you, is a better technology. And we're going to get into PulseX. That's a whole nother epic story that I don't want to tell, because it's like, you know, if I convince more people to buy into PulseX, then there's, you know, then I'm deluding myself. But again, like at some point when the OA is buying in and diluting everybody anyway, that's like balancing it out. At the end of the day, like I would probably feel better sharing the mad gains, like letting the people who put in the time to watch this channel, I would rather you understand why I want to invest so much into PulseX. And it's interesting because I really like, I can't think of any like incentive that I have like to be pumping that, or to, I almost have a disincentive to talk about it, but I'm willing to, just because like, why not, you know, mad gains for everybody. Bragging rights, you know, being right. I love, you know, like at some point keeping score is cool when it comes to these really complicated matters where, you know, I have put in, you know, so many, you know, however many thousands of hours to understand markets and Hex and crypto and everything. So I like being able to use that and to share it. So wrap stakes is going to be pretty wild. Okay, here's like a lighter type of prediction is that there will be continuous Hex meetups and conferences. And many of you know I am hosting the second Hex conference. And, you know, I'm not the only person who has wanted to help with that or has wanted to put one on. And that's why I hope as many people as possible put together meetups and conferences. I hosted a giant meetup in Las Vegas over the summer, and that was a great time. I would like other people to organize meetups as they're doing Discord Syndicate, and even more people, because I don't like working all of them. I'm cool with working 1 or 2 each year. It's a ton of work. I almost didn't realize that I would be working like the entire year. It was like, since the Hex meetup, we had to deal with returns. We had to deal with people who weren't able to make it. Then we had to ship stuff out to them, shipping stuff out to like 50 people, you know, who aren't getting you their mailing addresses right away. Like it turns into like a 2-week, 4-week, 6-week thing, waiting for everybody to come forward and say, hey, we need this. But it's all worth it. And at the end of the day, I think, you know, I've been able to pull off some really cool stuff, and this next conference is no exception. And so I'm going to show off here really quickly. I mean, I already went through the entire schedule, but this is what it looks like. We're going to have an epic Hex conference here in just about 10 days. It's January 6th through 9th, and it's hexpo.online. It's going to be 4 different days, 6 hours each. We've got like 80 people streaming with us. I'm still working through sending out all the instructions to all the speakers, but we have confirmed to everybody who doesn't have like an asterisk next to them. And so I'm really excited. There's some good stuff. Richard Hart is going to be involved. We're going to stream with an NFL player. We're going to stream with Eric Wall and break down what he's saying and set the record straight. Just everybody that I admire in the entire Hex community is participating. Discord Syndicate, need to check with Hexologists, need to check with a couple other people, but it's been super overwhelming how amazing it's been, and we're gonna have multiple people streaming one-on-one with Richard to highlight some of the people who've been putting in the most work in the space and haven't even streamed with him before. So I'm really excited about that. Let's see, what are some other predictions? I'm not sure if I'm going to have a graphic for each part. Let me see. Okay, so you could actually give somebody a continuous interest option with a wrapped stake, but we're not sure we want to do that for game theory reasons. We need to keep discussing the wrapped shares. Okay, here's a really cool one. I'm not sure that I've ever said this on a live stream, but hey, it's the end of 2021. You know, I need to get all the ideas out there, and so I don't mind sharing this one. But I have to warn you, this is a very special one to me, because I used to work in substance abuse treatment for 7 years as a therapist, specializing in mental health and neuroscience and the neuroscience of addiction, and then actually working with people directly to figure out what is going to help people change their behavior. And I was extremely successful at that. And one thing I ran into was gambling. And I got some training on treating gambling addiction, but just in general, it's something that is interesting because the behavior isn't so black and white. People, you know, gambling behavior is on a spectrum, and speculating fits onto that spectrum. So does investing on the opposite side of gambling. But what I realized when I created my own front end for Hex along with Future Us is that we could create many different front ends for Hex. And that's my prediction. In the future, there will be many front ends for Hex, and some will not be even recognizable as being Hex related at first. And so, for example, I could create, if I had a dev, hint, hint, we could create a gambling front end for Hex, where if you lose at the slot machine, then you time lock your money instead of giving it to a greedy casino owner. So, and literally it wouldn't be gambling. It could look like gambling where you're spinning a reel, but if you just spin reels, you know, there's some like fake gambling games just for entertainment that like are on the app store, and they're legal because you're just playing for fun. You're just playing for points. Well, you could play for Hex and you could put real money in, and the algorithm could make it seem like you're going up in value, but that you wouldn't be able to fund that. But the way that you could fix that is by making people play for a fixed duration. And so that's how some of these online gambling places work, is they give you this bonus. How could they pay everybody $100 to play on their site? But they lead you into games where the odds are so bad. And then even if you do get up because you're one of the lucky people, you're not allowed to cash out for so many spins. And then, you know, some of these places, especially if they're unaudited, like, why wouldn't they just be lying to you about, you know, they're making sure behind the scenes, they're programming the game so that it feels like you went up, and it, you know, you thought you could cash out because you hit the button, but then it's like, oh no, you have to wait to cash out these funds that you were just given, you know, by the house. And so they're not real funds. Like they don't act like the money you actually put in there yourself. And so this is one tactic that gambling places use to wreck people, but it could be used for good. Imagine that. And so a gambling front end where it could actually feel like a gambling game, where the value goes up, but it's been rigged, ethically rigged, right? To and you could tell people that up front, you know, like, I understand I'm playing a Hex investment, or I don't, like, either way, you don't understand, but there could be different front ends for different people. And but I believe you can make it compliant with the law, because right now you're allowed to like go on and stake Hex. So what's any different if you're playing a game before you do that, and where it feels like you're getting rewarded because you're winning more and more, and then either you have to lose to, you know, be able to exit the game and get your liquid Hex out, or you could have a version where a certain percentage you're losing to your future self, which is being time locked. And on the Pulse chain, you would be able to create stakes for pennies, and you'd be able to do swaps for pennies. So onboarding a user into this gambling game, you know, maybe you could program it to give other prizes, you know, that are rare, right? You could have rare NFTs that pop up that people get rewarded with, so they feel like they're leaving with something, right? But right now, how gambling machines work, at least in the United States, I know because you know, Illinois actually has more gambling machines than Nevada, than like Las Vegas does, because they've just infiltrated everywhere. Gas stations, laundromats, you know, pizza places, like everywhere. It is you know, I'm surprised that if you check into your, you know, kid's grade school, you don't have to click through a gambling machine in Illinois. And so the way that, because I've worked with, you know, I've worked with people who had addictions, who even like owned their own machine or something. And you know, the point being, about a third of the revenue from these gambling machines goes to the owner of the establishment, and a third goes to the state, and a third goes to the payouts to all the winners and losers, right? And so that's a huge margin. So you could just copy their code and make the game just as addictive and fun, but then add these extra parameters. You could use what's working in the real world, but at the end of the day, instead of leaving with nothing, you could leave with a printout of these 12 words, and now you're earning hex every day, right? You could program in a button into the gambling machine that says like donate to a school, and then you could have a DAO. Maybe you wouldn't want to trust that, but maybe it goes into a multi-sig that the school has a key for, and you have a key for, and then you work out with them what they're going to spend it on. So, but in Illinois, what they do is they say that the gambling funds are going to go to education, and they put it in the education account for like 10 seconds, and then they move it into the general construction fund where they pay out the people who get them elected and don't fix the roads. So that's a better use case for gambling, I would say. But again, it's like super interesting because it's not gambling if people aren't getting paid out more than they put in. And it's literally just like tricking people into buying a savings deposit, or like letting people do it in a more entertaining way. I don't want to say like tricking people, because I believe that there will be ways to implement this that are way more ethical than gambling, way more ethical than anything that's deceptive, right? For a lot of people, if you take somebody who likes gambling and you put them in front of something that looks like gambling, and you tell them like, this is good for you, right? They're gonna be like, yeah, cool. Let me play, right? So that's an interesting way to like treat gambling, is to give people the tools that they need in order to just time like that money into the future. Like, oh, you gambled it away right now. Now you lost it. Do you want it to go to the state and to like the person who's owning this laundromat, or do you want it to go to your future self? I don't know. I'm open to feedback, but I feel like that's a really good idea. Hexaholic, there you go. I'm a hexaholic. At this point, my constructive relationship with Hex, I need to be paid every day to function properly. I think I will for the rest of my life. Well, there you go. Yeah, and not being able to sell that interest is going to have a different effect on your mental health and your financial and emotional well-being. Sometimes, compared to just being able to sell it at any time. RH does say the best shit. Kind of like a prize pool, like a lottery for savings. Yes. So that everybody wins because everybody's time locking, because the number doesn't just go up. I mean, you can have lots of different ways to program this type of front end. You could have all the different games that you have in a casino now programmed down there. That would be really cool. Making games that pay long-term rewards is an excellent idea. Thank you. Gambling is very addictive. Yes. Okay, let's see. What other predictions do we have? I think this is going well. So, oh, here's an unpopular one. So like, I predict that some hexagons will try to exploit others. And others will take better care and be more protective of their audiences, as we all have a mutual stake in protecting all of our bags, as long as we're not greedy and trying to catch up to thy neighbor. Thou shalt not try to catch up to thy neighbor in your hex bag, because other than staking longer, you might be incentivized to try to take advantage of people, or I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, I think Richard does a pretty good job of just advising people to stay away from projects that he didn't create. And I'm about to drop a bunch of info about PulseX that I don't think I should, because I think it's, I mean, I'm going to tell you why I'm going to buy a lot of it. But getting back to this, we don't need more butthurt, bad actor billionaires in the world than we already have. So it's good that Hexicans can be different than the billionaires that came before us. And promoting that as a part of our ethos and our community, and, you know, signaling to each other, for each other, cross-promoting people that you admire because they have integrity. But there are going to be situations where part of the audience is pulled away by people who are presenting very well. They have a better production than the OGs do on average. But they will be bad actors because they will not have big hex bags that stop them from taking advantage of their audience. I have a big hex bag. I do not have to take advantage of my audience. That is my hex flex right now. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't support new Hexicans who are streamers. The point is that no matter how good somebody is, we need to keep supporting the people who have the right incentives at play. And we need to keep our guard up because the incentives of others, right, are not as high. And I think I've run into that already, where I've questioned different members of the community, and personally, my experience has been super positive. Like, when I don't trust other people in the community, I end up finding out that they're good because I get to see how they play out over time. And so that's what I'm trying to say with this prediction, is that I think those of you Hexicans who are watching this channel who are not here for the introduction, but who are here for the masterclass that keeps evolving, you're the ones I'm fighting for. I will eventually make content for new people so that the channel can keep growing. But it is the people who are already rich in Hex who I want to stick with. I want to keep providing the best value for you, bringing guests who are going to help you understand the space better. Being an expert on the cutting edge of a brand new technology such as cryptocurrency that will change the world and change history, that's exciting stuff. So there's plenty. We're not going to run out of stuff to talk about, and this stream should be an example of that, because we already broke down some wrapped hex stakes that I haven't heard anybody talk about ever, some of those applications. So we're gonna keep doing that, but it's gonna, you, the viewer with the great hex bag, or that believes in hex more than other people, it's gonna be up to you also to not lose interest in the channel. It's give me feedback, be positive, and to support everybody in the ecosystem. And again, that's what the Hex Conference is gonna do. We're gonna have some really good content for everybody. And more, I would say, and more. So Hexicans will follow the leaders that they trust. A prediction with some new YouTubers selling out to try to make up mad gains of early YouTubers and holders. Okay, here's a fun one. So everybody knows there's a Netflix style documentary coming from Hex, from the group Muse Productions, and they are calling this The Highest of Stakes. I am not going to lie, I've come to love the name, but I did make a prediction before I came to love the name as much, that they will make a prequel after that. It's going to be extremely successful. It's going to make Hex much more popular. We're going to penetrate Hollywood. Hollywood's going to penetrate the rest of the world. The United States exports more culture and movies and influencing culture than they do export military goods, I would say, or at least that's the part we forget about, right? when you go to Europe today, or I don't know, the first time I went to Europe was, I don't know, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they were playing music from 15 years before that. They were playing 90s music in clubs all across Europe. And maybe it was the style of club I was going to, but in general, that shocked me. That I was like, wow, all these assholes don't speak English. And God forgive me, I've learned to not be an ethnocentric asshole. But at the time, I was impressed. I didn't know that culture had exported throughout the world, and that you know that kind of was part of America's empire, the world reserve currency, and all this other hocus pocus stuff. So that being said, I mean, a documentary, like, people are interested in that. People are not interested in much these days because of the attention economy. And so having a really epic storytelling team and these professionals who have won 5 Emmys, that's really exciting. And so I'm predicting massive success, box office smashing, better than Tiger King. You know, Joe Exotic has way more followers than Joe Exotic, and yada yada. So they're gonna have to make a prequel. That's a solid prediction. And I'm guessing that the name is gonna be Truth Engine, because that's another like way to think about Hex, and it's got multiple meanings, and it's like deep on game theory. And you know, not everybody's got the highest of stakes. It's a drama, you know, it might be part of a drama documentary. I'm not, you know, we haven't seen what the style is going to be yet, but it's going to be epic. And so the prequel is going to be named Truth Engine, and the sequel is going to be called The Highest of Fakes, because many will try to fake and be like Hex, but there will only be one. Let's see, another prediction. Peter McCormack will apologize to Richard Hart for being wrong about Hex, and in a tour de force, Richard will forgive him. That'd be pretty epic. The reason I'm predicting that is just because it would be epic, and because nobody would predict that. So we'll see if I'm right. Another prediction is that Hex will keep growing organically, and every point at which it is challenged and there is a FUD, it will be much more immune to that than any other coin, because in any other coin, people can cut and run. And how Hex exists now, you're going to fix the problem if you run into it. If Hex suffered some problem that any other crypto suffered, Hex would be better prepared, because it has more stakeholders who have more at stake. Period. End of story. This helps you understand one of the hidden strengths of Hex is that the community is incentivized to work together. And I know of no other force really in the universe that facilitates humans working together to pump their own bags on something, necessarily more than Hex. Hex is the best positioned crypto in this regard. If it were to run into some bug or problem, right? So it each time it's challenged, it will harden and become even more strong, because the people who are holding liquid, who don't believe or who aren't willing to do the work to fix it, will they'll sell, and they'll be replaced by people who, some of which will be stronger hands. Hex will adapt and harden and become a more powerful social network, which is something we see with money, but we don't see, because it's part of our social network, and it's part of the way that we even experience society is by you know, what financial privileges we have. And so disrupting that will have a lot of social ramifications as well. Hexagons will be able to buy senators and government officials, but might not need to as much, because those government officials will have people working for them that will find out about Hex and have the time to research it before they do. And we already see this. It's like there's lots of powerful people in Hex already, without anybody bribing them to be here, without having to pay the middleman. So it's going to be, so Congress might come at Hex way harder eventually than anything else, which will only make it harder. Will harden the censorship resistance, will harden the game theory, because Hex is incentivizing not only strong hands to hold it, but people's hands to become stronger. And that's part of the escape velocity that happens when you're forced to hold something that is appreciating faster than any other asset in history. It's important. So I still tell people, if you buy $100 or $200 worth of Hex and time lock it for 15 years, you could be very rich. Not financial advice. So another prediction that I have is that Hex will change people for the better. That people, when they delay gratification with their monetary environment, when their monetary environment incentivizes them to save instead of spend, to pay your future self instead of borrowing from your future self, like in the credit system that currently exists. I love how economists tell you that you need mad inflation and you need credit in order for the economy to keep innovating, when that is not true. In fact, I would argue that the innovation would happen no matter what. The technology would happen whether you were paying for it with credit or you were paying with it, or you were paying for it not with credit that's ultimately created through inflation. Like when a bank gives people loans, when credit card companies give people loans, they're literally just stealing from your future self by limiting your ability to hold a store of value, because they're constantly printing more and more money. So it's like a cool story and a really good lie, really effective and really highly valuable, $100 trillion lie, that you need these credit systems. Technology, if you believe that technology would advance anyway, at any price, that the market would adjust, then you realize that all that money that they're printing and loaning to you is money that you would have. Like you would own more of technology if banks weren't exponentially money printing and loaning it to everybody, and then like technology is exponentially getting cheaper and better and is by nature deflationary, and you need like less humans to do work, unless you make everybody work for $10 or $20 an hour and don't share those mad gains with humanity of technology. And so, feeding technology through credit, that would be the same thing as giving people ownership of those mad gains. But right now, only the billionaires and the Federal Reserve and, the powers to be, the people who hold all the liquidity, rig the market. So again, that's super bullish for humanity if we share the mad gains of this exponential improvement in technology that's happening. So that, I believe, would cause human productivity and average wealth to go parabolic in the end, because the majority of mankind would reach a sort of escape velocity. Because once you adjust to like having nice things, then you're going to, in general, still seek meaning. You're still going to work. people getting rich does not stop them from working, whether they need to, whether they're being forced to by living paycheck to paycheck or not. And so people would do more things that they enjoy than things that's their only option, but that would further increase productivity in some cases. After everybody gets out of their system, right, that you're free and your time is your time, then you're going to start valuing your time more because it's yours, because you don't have to give it to somebody else to survive. So it's a totally different way of thinking, and it's really hard to prove because most people who get rich are still owned by their boss and have more responsibility and have more debt and et cetera, et cetera. So it's very strange to be in Hex and to have these mad gains and to not have to answer to anybody, quote unquote, fuck you money, right? So, but I believe that especially if you are giving people something that can time lock for 15 years, money with the same purchasing power is going to go much farther in 15 years if inflation is ended by cryptocurrency in general. Which may or may not happen, but look, Ethereum is inflationary. Bitcoin is inflationary. Hex is inflationary. Although it's not realized for now on average of about 5.9 years. And then you have exponential adoption, possibly, which more than makes up for that because more people are locking for longer. More people locking for longer, and then you reach an equilibrium. And now you have 6 years or 3 years or 10 years to let technology exponentially grow. And then you share those mad gains with everybody. And many people relock and they only live off their interest. And so it pays for itself. If it's adopted, basically, as more than just a speculation. But hey, it's fine. If a new monetary system is adopted because there was 15 years of speculation, and then there was 15 years of being rewarded to save by mad gains, by mad adoption, by time locking, so you don't sell your Bitcoin when it goes from a penny to $100. You're becoming the next Bitcoin billionaires in slow motion when you fuck with Hex. So there are clear pathways for, in my opinion, the economics to balance out and to be something different than we've been told up until this point, because that's what technology does. This technology can make us more efficient, more productive. It can organize us better, to cooperate, to pump each other's bags, right? To be financially free, to experience, not when humans didn't have running water, your survival, that's what you spent your time for, you traded your time for survival, and humans started to cooperate more and more. And then there have been periods where human labor is exploited by other humans in pursuit of something, which is usually greed, which sometimes helps everybody when that person dies or becomes too powerful and gets overthrown or whatever. Humans are destructive with their creationism, with their creativity and competitive, but at some point the game changes at different inflection points, at different exponential leaps forward. And so it's very possible that even though all this AI stuff is hyped and everything, it might be that the breakthrough that the most humans experience at once, other than smartphones, is smarter savings, smarter money that pays you to hold it, money that incentivizes other health behaviors indirectly or directly, right? And so if you want to see like my original predictions before I even started live streaming, you can go to 3gcrypto.com, and that has an article where I talk about how Hex benefits mental health and how it could be used directly as a behavioral incentivification program that people, a contract that you make with yourself to pay your future self and to use behaviors other than just saving to unlock your riches. And whether that's, taking more steps in your day or cursing less with the Fitbit API that, can tell every time you're yelling at somebody, right? Or even with other people validating your behavior change, when you check in at the gym, or when you're lowering your heart rate because you're participating in this yoga video or whatever, there are so many examples that you could build into a system where you pay yourself instead of, because we know paying people works. It's the most effective strategy in psychology when it comes to behavioral interventions, even though talk therapy is the most used behavioral intervention. Contingency management has a stronger effect size. We know that bigger than science, there's this little experiment called like the economy and people working for other people. And that is pretty good evidence that you can motivate people to do things that they normally would not do if they were not getting paid. And so, society has been organized in this model where other people pay you to do things that are beneficial to them or to the business, and maybe to you, maybe not. And then you prioritize that because you are in a monetary environment that is keeping you running on this rat wheel. And so that really doesn't fulfill people as much. But this idea of people being able to pay themselves, you haven't been able to do that because monetary, because money, cash money and electronic money is a bearer asset to you. You can't write a smart contract unless you go to a lawyer and you involve a middleman. You can't write a smart contract that tells you to get out of bed in the morning and not be depressed. But with Hex, you could. So I've talked a lot about that before. And then there's like the subconscious part of, I'm going to be so rich in the future, why don't I take better care of myself? And then I should really do more streams where I talk about like skincare and like, show you the sleep hygiene skills I talk about, and, all these skills that really like a lot of you might have or might have a different opinion on, but it's just, we're all here together for 15 years. So let's, let's pump each other's bags in terms of behaviors and health so that we have longer health spans. That's what people are going to care about once you can live longer, is having the number of years that you're healthy increase along with the number of years that you're alive. Because nobody wants to have 50 healthy years and then have 100 unhealthy years. That doesn't sound cool. So that's another reason why why Hexicans donate to the Sons Foundation. There's another prediction. I predict that we're going to continue to work with a lot of charities. Richard foreshadowed it. It might not happen with this sacrifice phase, but I am willing to bet that Hexicans will continue to build relationships with researchers and look to funding the cutting edge of science once these mad gains continue. I also believe that IQ will grow based on people having the right tools available to them, and old models of education that are inefficient, like having the 300th best psychology teacher like teach you at your school who is being shit on by everybody, you know, like to do what they really want to do, whether it's research or whether it's clinical work or something, who's not getting paid very well. Like you could, instead of paying an insane amount of money and going into debt to get an education that way, you could go to experts online who can teach 1 million people something because they're teaching it the best way possible. And then you end up with more innovators and free thinkers and people who are educated in a lot of things. So you don't have to gatekeep education when money is right. When the monetary environment is better, people are better prepared to educate themselves and to create more value. So again, it pays for itself. Or people can just do it for that altruistic edge because Hex is allowing people to cooperate better than in the past. Like it's a money that incentivizes cooperation. I'm also predicting that the Hex conference will get bigger and bigger each year and not get corrupted. More on that in a special episode. But that's what I'm going to say is that we're not stalling out. And we're not going to be like the Bitcoin conference. This past year in Miami, the Bitcoin conference was embarrassing. As an OG, like, you know, I got into Bitcoin when it was the same price as an ounce of gold. And, you know, I never had a lot necessarily, nothing compared to Hex, but it was embarrassing how much they sold out, how much they let the manipulative psychopath exchanges that incentivize people to leverage trade and, you know, play all these zero-sum games. That's how I know Bitcoiners are different than Hexicans, because Hexicans, like, I know people who bought thousands of meals for people for Christmas with their Hex gains. I know people who donate to mental health centers with their Hex gains. Bitcoiners are out there running their conference, getting sponsored by FTX, having, you know, leveraged exchange CEOs on their ethics panel. If you're a psychopath billionaire or you're even 100 millionaire and you really want to rub it in people's faces that you're all powerful, yeah, you would want to be on an ethics panel corrupting the shit out of that. Because that's how you know you're in the Olympics of being corrupt, right? So that's embarrassing, and y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. So Hex conference, not like that, not for sale. So that's kind of cool. That's something to look forward to. That's a prediction. You heard it here first, right? Because that's something, like I said earlier, I predict that there will be constant Hex meetups and conferences as Hex goes viral. I guess I didn't say that. Hex, I believe, will go viral in 2022. That will lead to constant Hex meetups, which we almost already have. There will be multiple conferences and places. You know, they just had the Hex 731 gathering with Discourse Syndicate. Richard speaks highly of it. We did the online all around the world Hex second year birthday party thing. They got the most views out of any video on my channel. Almost, maybe like 50 views away. And those aren't any people watching. It wasn't marketed to people who don't know what it is. Those are 12,000 people who are engaged in Hex because they're time locked, because they've learned maybe that there's more to it than just the monetary side of things. That they're still enjoying the community. They're enjoying, you know, helping others, educating others, bringing more people into the space. Because, you know, through my development as a broadcaster and just as a Hex investor, I've struggled with, like, we already did 100X. Like, should I really be onboarding my mom now? And the answer was like, yeah, I should have been doing it like at the right level, right? Like if I gift my mom $100 or $200 of hex, like that's going to be a good start for her. And that's the strategy that I've taken with a lot of people. And, you know, if I gifted somebody hex, $100 worth of hex last year, it's worth $4,200 today. And we've only done like a 25x. So there's interest in the game, and those people are time locked, you know, because you can, you know, you can gift these cold storage coins that, you know, you can put $100 on. There's some counterparty risk, but, you know, there's a lot of ways to onboard people. I've been experimenting with a lot of them, and but I don't worry about people that I've given $100 of hex to. That might buy them a whole house, you know, after the 15 years is up. For a lot of people, it's already appreciated, but that's what I'm saying is like, the more you educate yourself and understand the technicals, and then when we start to talk about the game theory and Pulse and how that's going to drive so many users to hex, if you don't understand the technology that you are helping people get into, right? Because money can change. It doesn't change a lot, but like we don't walk around with gold coins anymore. Money is digital. And the digital money printer is being abused by the Federal Reserve. We know this because there have been so many trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars printed. And that comes out of everybody's pockets, even though it doesn't seem like it. I'm kind of predicting that there's going to be another like imitator of hex that somehow is like more well known. I literally, even when there are copies of hex, I just don't pay attention to them. And I haven't heard of any in a while, but I mean, you know, first they laugh at you and then they gatekeep you and then they pretend to be you, and then they just get it and learn. And there's two types of people in the world: people who understand the hex now and people who will. So imitators, I don't know, maybe there will be a successful one in 2022, but then they'll ultimately rug pull and a bunch of people will learn something that will be more valuable than an entire degree in finance, which is stick with the real thing. I predict that PulseChain will vampire attack and set free all of the value on the Ethereum network that is being trapped by a security racket of miners and those who are holding it as a store of value instead of what it was intended for, which is a decentralized world computer that cost pennies to transact on. Well, I believe that PulseChain will save the day and that it will be a major upset, that many will not see it coming. And all of these haters of Hex who have been following the story and missing out on those mad gains that they could have had, like BitBoy, the most popular crypto YouTuber, who only has 1 million or 1.5 million followers, he's going to try to tell people that he told them so. He invested in PulseChain, is my understanding. And so there is a lot of free advertising that is about to happen. At the same time, I believe that PulseChain will make history when it comes to teaching economists about how liquidity works in a truly free market. Now, let me explain that. It's something that a truly free market is something that most people don't realize doesn't exist currently. We all think that the stock market maybe is a free market, or it's not too rigged, or what's in between the stock market and the companies that you supposedly own. Well, you can't change anything at the menu. Or you can't change anything on the menu at McDonald's. You can't change how Apple is, you know, inventing their next iPhone just because you hold a lot of the shares or any of the shares. So the reality is that even in the stock market, Apple stock is controlled by the investment bankers. that are playing both sides of the trade, and they're rigging the entire market to swing before your trade gets processed. And that's why 50, you know, it's been for years now, I believe, fact check me on this, for years, it's been 50% of the trading volume on the stock market is high frequency trading bots. Why is that a more dangerous number than 90%? Because they're trading one-to-one. Every order that a human does is executed by a bot to rob the value, to rig the market, to stop anyone from actually gaining the awesome value that's created by technology. So all of the mad gains that would be possible in a free market are being hoarded by people who are rigging the system. They're pretending that you get a 2x in the stock market every 10 years, but when you actually play the game and win the prize, then you can't really cash out. It's like our gambling example earlier, where you can have people win 10 spins in a row, but they have to keep spinning in order to keep playing, or they do just by nature, and this is their long-term savings account. But who really gets to cash it out? And what is that even worth when you try to cash it out, you know? There's a reason why. So this always, it's always puzzled me, and now I'm starting to maybe understand it. Why is it that the most successful stock pickers in the world can't pick better than the mutual fund, the index fund, in fact? Well, you know, it could be that the market is really competitive and there's no inside trading, and so, you know, but I think the reality is that it's all a rigged market and all the mad gains are going behind the scenes. You know, the exponential gains in technology are not being reflected in the market, not being reflected in people being able to cash out the value that they're putting in to grow the economy, because people are living in a credit-based society. So you can give somebody a 20% interest rate, and then you can double their money every 5 or 10 years in the stock market, and you still end up stealing from them behind their back. They don't even realize it. That the inflation and the money creation, the price of things doesn't go up very fast if the exponential money printer is going at the same speed as the exponential mad gains in technology, and you don't realize that you're missing the price of everything that should be going down exponentially over time, not doubling every 10 to 15 years. So, I mean, with that being said, it's an empirical question. When it comes to the vampire attack and whether PulseChain, whether the code and the game theory there are going to get to write the history books or not. I believe the market will decide. I believe that the market is so stupid because we're buying NFTs and dog coins, right? That are literally just not even designed well. They're like forks of forks that are less secure than Bitcoin. It's madness. But the people who combine all the best rules, you know, and like who really, you know, Hex could still be set up better than any other crypto, even though it hasn't hit virality, because it becomes the store of value. Imagine if Hex was super popular now, everybody would lose their value to doing transactions on the blockchain. Like Ethereum had to be replaced once they started messing up, like 6 months into Hex being launched, and the transactions weren't a penny anymore. When Hex launched, transactions were a penny. Several pennies is what I paid. Some people say they only paid a penny, but I always wanted to go fast. Fast transaction, 10 cents or $1, you know. But That's not how it is anymore. So I predict that PulseChain will allow a decentralized computer to work. It will prove that the proof of stake system is viable and can function at scale. It will create a vampire attack on the rest of the space using this genius fixer bot, using the genius copying the system state of Ethereum. So you're going to do better than Binance Chain, which like had mad gains. You're going to do better, right? So there are all these use cases. Like, I want you to understand in this predictions episode why PulseChain is going to do so many X's right away, is because I don't think people fully understood when the initial offering was available, right? You can't really sacrifice for Pulse anymore, but when you could, I mean, we talked about a lot of this on QuantGang, but here we are a few months later and it's getting real because the testnet is out. And so another thing I want to make predictions about is PulseX. And I know that a lot of people have been, using it as clickbait. A lot of people have been trying to make resources and help people understand. I've been getting a lot of questions from onboards. And this is something that I am recommending to people who are new in the space or who just are engaged. They might not watch every video, but if I text them, hey, throw $100 into MetaMask and put it into this PulseX thing, I think that they are going to do very, very, very well. And I want to explain what the use case is for that. So this is game theory that was just released by Richard. It's not the final code. It's not, so it could still change and it's still being optimized. But this is based off what he publicly said on the Christmas Eve stream and streams before. But it looks like, so PulseX, which we were calling Pulse Swap for a while, it's going to be like the Uniswap code forked over onto PulseChain. And we knew that this was coming when the game theory room started, the secret game theory room where there were like 70 of us who contributed thoughts. It was discussed very early on in there that there would be a dual token system. What we're ending up with now is kind of a triple token system. And the rationale for that is better than anything that currently exists, but it's built with things that currently are kicking all the ass that there is to kick. The native token is Pulse. Pulse gets its value by copying the Ethereum state, by having faster blocks that can hold more data. And so it's 4 times faster. It's pennies instead of hundreds of dollars to trade and do swaps. And everybody who holds liquidity on Ethereum is going to be holding a copy of their tokens on Pulse. And that will be available for some people to put up as liquidity. So there's going to be farming, there's going to be yield farming. And that's the third token. So that doesn't have a name yet, unless it got released. Like, I haven't caught up on the stream from yesterday yet, but that's what we're looking at. So we're looking at this entire ecosystem being built that is necessary and that has made, each token has made billions and billions of dollars in other applications, even when people were copying it all over the place. Uniswap got vampire attacked by SushiSwap, right? And Binance Smart Chain got in on the action, and it was like a vampire orgy or whatever. But at the end of the day, they all got users, and the founders mostly are probably the ones who still hold the majority of the liquidity, and they are not cashing out to zero because they're probably yield farming themselves. They have deals with venture capitalists. It's highly rumored that Andreessen Horowitz bought into Uniswap before they did their token. MetaMask is probably going to do a token. That's a whole nother story. But this idea that we're taking the pieces that already worked and we're putting them all into PulseChain in the best possible configuration, that makes a lot of sense for technology. And there are a lot of big brains that are working on that. PulseX will have a built-in 0.3% fee, and 21% of that fee will be handled by a buyback program that will buy and burn that amount of PulseSwap tokens, which are deflationary in that regard. So apparently my understanding so far, why I'm super bullish, is that all of the PulseSwap, or also known as PulseX tokens that exist, will come from the sacrifice phase, and then there are no more. And so in that sense, Pulse and PulseX are deflationary by nature, because Pulse is burning a quarter of the transaction fee that's occurring for any, just like Ethereum, for any transaction. And then there's this special fee to do a swap, right? And so that is going to reinforce the value of the PulseX token to the extent that if this is the primary exchange, which it's going to be set up that way because the fixer bot is going to go through on the Pulse launch, and it's going to take all the liquidity pools that are sitting there on ETH, and it's going to copy them over to Pulse, and then it's going to fix the ratios, because there's going to be like a 1000x difference on each side of the trade, because of how much more Pulse is going to be created in the total supply than exists in Ethereum. And so it's like a 1,000,000x more Pulse tokens. And so the fixer bot's going to go in and it pull out like 99% of those copied over tokens and replace them with Pulse. So you have value on both sides of the liquidity pool. And so if that is integrated as it could be with PulseX, then everybody who's swapping, who's using the system, is going to be using PulseSwap, and that's going to lead to a lot of volume, tons of volume. This hasn't been done where there's like the world's largest airdrop, and you just gave people a way to basically get rich like an exchange gets rich off of volume. So I believe the PulseX token will, and it doesn't have admin keys. That's a new innovation. You have not had a buy and burn program built in with fees that didn't have an admin key, but this will have a public function that you can run, just like the good accounting. We're going to have John Wick come to the Hex conference and explain how he ran a public function in Hex to end the stakes of the origin address to increase the daily payout for everybody, and how that, having been invented for Hex, can be used. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's where one of these public functions exists and works, and you're going to be able to run that so that you have an admin-free buy and burn program. That gives the token value, because it's like you're profiting from all of the volume that's occurring on the network through that protocol. Now, somebody could come along and they could try to vampire tag that and make a copy that has a 0.1% fee. But they're not going to have all these people buying in who are stakeholders. You're not time locking, but you're a stakeholder in that you are an investor. And so if we get millions and millions, or hundreds of millions, or billions of dollars of people buying in or sacrificing for this PulseX token, those are going to be people who are then incentivized, hopefully, to use and promote PulseX as the exchange. So there's a little bit of like loose game theory there. And if it's not the most popular one, then it doesn't have as much of a value. Although even tokens like Uniswap, where they aren't making any fees, people are just, it's duct taped on, people are paying for these tokens, and the protocol leaves them behind almost, because like, you know, updating to V3 was supposed to be this big breakthrough, but it's just like putting stop loss and like limit orders and like all this other stuff on there. It's not really making it so anybody can pull from either side of the trade at any time. That's what real liquidity is. So the difference between the liquidity in the Pulse network and on a public blockchain versus the liquidity that's held by people who are rigging the market and who are investment bankers is that they can pull their liquidity at any time. In crypto, you can pull the liquidity anytime, but you can't post it in the first place without a whale getting a shot at it. And if you misprice something, the price gets fixed on, you know, by the free market. It gets fixed by somebody going in there and saying, hey, that's a deal. I'm, you know, like, and then the impermanent loss, it's what's suffered by the liquidity provider. So the liquidity provider is incentivized to make sure that that ratio is honest, otherwise they wouldn't join the pool. So the existence of a large liquidity pool gives credence to price to a certain extent, that you can sell into it or buy into it without pushing the price against yourself. But on an automated market maker, because it's not a corrupt middleman, you push the price against yourself in a mathematical function, not based on, you know, the corruption of politics or the corruption of, you know, the markets that aren't fully transparent, that, you know, don't have regulators really doing their job, that sort of thing. So like, when I put up USDC and Hex into a liquidity pair, somebody can come along and take it if they think I'm wrong. And then I won't have my Hex anymore if they took the Hex and put in USDC. And then I can pull out my USDC and my Hex because the ratio changed. So I can pull out the same value that I put in, but I've suffered impermanent loss. And so that's kind of a rough explanation of how automated market makers work. But this is why you want to have adoption, and why I think that the PulseX, you know, because it's being believed in, created by Richard Hart, believed in by the community that believes in Hex. Why didn't we get more people buying into Pulse? Because it wasn't created yet, but also because people didn't believe in Richard because they thought it was too good to be true, what happened with Hex. So it created this like weird filtering effect where Hexicans are going to get richer because they were more likely to believe in Richard and invest in PulseChain, even though these other finfluencers, these fake gurus, these furus, like some of them bought in to Pulse, they didn't have 1,000x or 1,000,000x gains, like to, or sorry, 1,000,000% gains or 10,000x gains to buy in with if they didn't believe in Hex. And so usually if they're wrecking their audience and shilling leveraged exchanges, then they are broken as a person and not, you know, they're not doing the altruistic thing with YouTube, which few are. But PulseX is therefore, you know, like, it's a very good bet, because imagine if you could own like a fee on the entire New York Stock Exchange, or a fee on, you know, 1/3% fee on like people doing currency swaps or something. You know, like there's trillions of dollars swapped. There's hundreds of billions of dollars of volume on blockchains every day. So if only a few people buy into PulseX, or even if like, you know, a medium amount of people buy in, they're going to be incentivized to hold it and to earn money through that buyback mechanism that creates positive price pressure forever while there's still volume trading there. So yeah, that's so I believe that PulseX will be the most profitable like volume trade, like investing in playing the volume game and playing the fee game. And this is not financial advice. So like I'm not investing money that I need to survive. And I'm taking a calculated risk. So it's like maybe I will decrease my lifestyle to delay gratification and feel something again, right? And feel normal because I've got my hex time locked, because I have some money to live on for the year, but maybe I want to decrease how much money I'm living on and invest in this thing that seems valuable to me. It seems like it's a good technology. That being said, maybe some other protocol has more users and they steal the users somehow. So you're not going to find a bunch of FUD here, because I will likely be very public about how I do my sacrifice for PulseX. I have a landing page set up already. It's linked to, I think, in the show notes here or on the Quant Gang for tomorrow. But if you just go to my YouTube channel, it's under the upcoming live streams. There's a landing page for the PulseX launch, whenever that is. It's supposed to be by the end of the year. So I've got it scheduled for the 31st, but if it happens tomorrow, then we'll go live tomorrow with that landing page and to cover that and to help people not get scammed and to release all the information we can, and point you to our sources. So I hope that that's helpful. I am very satisfied. I've covered a lot of predictions. Let me see if there's anything else I've got, rolling around like a tumbleweed in the back of my head. I think the OA is going to sacrifice again. I was the only person I know of that predicted the OA would sacrifice for Pulse. Everybody told me I was crazy. I withheld the information because I knew that there was a whale that maybe wouldn't buy in if they knew that there was going to be this I predicted a $10 billion buy-in from the OA, which did a 10x, which took up 90% of the supply. Surprise, at the end of the sacrifice phase. And so I predicted that in closed circles and realized that I should not broadcast it. And then after the whale sacrifice, after all the whales did at the beginning, then I publicly made the prediction. Everybody told me I was crazy on Quant Gang. We argued about it for 2 different episodes, and then I was right. And it was 14 billion that ended up. So I mean, Hex did a 500x at that point, or 1000x or 5000x or something, and I was off by 0.4x. So lots of billions, but most people were predicting no sacrifice at all by the OA, and some people were predicting it privately. So anyway, I mean, it's super easy now to follow that. I mean, I think the majority of people now would be predicting that the OA does sacrifice. I would have to think more about what the rationale in game theory would be for the OA to not sacrifice, but it was a surprise last time, but this time I think it's expected. And I'm not sure that it really changes how those of us who believe in PulseX are going to play it, really, because almost I believe if everybody's getting diluted, 90%, but that 90% is never going to sell, like in Hex and in Pulse, that makes me feel better about getting other people into it. Instead of just keeping it a secret to myself and having a smaller, a bigger share for myself. It's if I'm already getting diluted by 10x, then shoot, I might as well tell other people. And I'm not sure if that's how it's designed. I'm not saying that that's how it's designed to be, but that's kind of how I and I reacted weird to I didn't like the referral program, because it just seemed like, why am I not, giving this knowledge for free? Because it was given to me for free, and so like I had a hang up about that, but people could have self-referred. That's a total tangent, but at the end of the day, yeah, I think the OA is going to sacrifice. I think it'd be interesting to think about why the OA would not sacrifice, why a surprise in that regard would be a positive thing for the market. But I think at the end of the day, the OA is going to do what it does best, which is to use the maximal game theory. And if the best game theory that's in the wild living right now is, the OA and Hex having 90% of the supply and not selling, and then to do the same for Pulse, I don't see why they wouldn't do the same for PulseX, because it creates options in the case of a contentious fork or a misbehaving whale or something. It keeps everybody in check. And I would maintain that that's the type of behavior that we've seen on the blockchain from the OA. It's like stock some whale stakes that are like super short from time to time. It's like let you know that somebody's there, like, playing mind games with you and that sort of thing. So and I predict that everybody will have a really good time seeing the DeLorean in person at the Hex conference in person. So the Hex conference live online is going to be January 6th through 9th. We have an amazing lineup scheduled for that. And, but it's also time to buy tickets now for the Hex conference in Las Vegas. And you can go to hexticket.com, or you can go to hexconference.com and click the link. And that takes you to the Eventbrite page where you can buy some of the remaining tickets. There's like 300 tickets or 500 tickets left. Like we've already sold 280 or 300, somewhere in there. So this is, the price could go up, but for now, that's still the deal. And you're gonna get to meet up with everybody in Vegas. Everybody who's been enjoying the US road tour has been saying they're excited to meet up with everybody in Vegas. I know I am super excited. Our last Vegas meetup was legendary. And again, I'll have the Hex DeLorean there. We will have the Hex cars from the 5555 tour, so that you've seen pictures of these, and everybody will get a chance to take pictures with the cars and meet all of their favorite Hex YouTubers and everybody. So again, we're gonna probably finish ticket sales during the online conference here in 10 days. So go ahead and get your ticket now before they're sold out at hexticket.com or hexconference.com, and that'll take you to the Eventbrite. Richard is going to do a DAO when it comes. That's a great question. Richard's going to do a DAO, it sounds like, when it comes to some aspect of the farming token. So the liquidity farming token, and like how he said it's going to be inflationary, but the inflation is going to decrease over time, like Bitcoin. And instead of giving the people who hold that token some of the voting rights for how like a side pool gets split up, there are more like little pieces that are built in to PulseX and Pulse and Pulse, the farming token. But the DAO is meant to like balance that out. And so you can go to Richard's Christmas Eve stream and listen to where he was going back and forth on like where to plug that DAO in, that mechanism. But that is popular, and that, is not only good for advertising, but it's something that we should keep working with, because, decentralized autonomous organizations are a cool technology that we need to explore and improve. So that's something to look forward to. Can we launch prior to DOA? Not sure what that means. I think the launch is going to be at the right time. Hex was launched at the perfect time. which was at the bottom of the bear market, and Richard called it. So I was there, and that was a good time to launch it. So I will tell Richard he can say 4 more weeks as many times as he wants. Yeah, go back to the 3-hour stream. No problem. My pleasure for bringing that up. And I'm not sure if there's a transcript of it, but there are timestamps now. I can't recall exactly. I would say it was in the first 2/3 at least, maybe in the first third, somewhere around there. Bitfinesse, hilarious that the things coming up are the things we've heard before, except this time we're dealing with legitimate operating functional characteristics, not just duct taped on nonsense. That's correct. So Uniswap got away with being duct taped on. They have not activated their 0.3% fee that's built into the code. Although they are like not letting people use the license for their V3 for a couple of years, and it's been a year or maybe a little bit less than a year. But even though it's duct taped on and it's not actually gaining any fees, it's just like someday it could gain fees. That's really silly. But that token did really well. And same with like Binance, it's like centralized and corrupt, and that one did really well. So imagine how well one is going to do when it actually has more of a direct value proposition. That's awesome. Just bought my Hex conference ticket, Las Vegas, baby. Hey, congratulations to Hex Element, and shout out to you. And I hope that everybody else really gets a chance to take the time now to get your ticket. I know that there are 140 people watching live, and there are usually 1,000 people watching on the replay, sometimes 2,000 or 3,000. Sometimes, I mean, if people are really digging it, you know, if I'm a lot of not all of the historic content gets the most views, but some of it does. Like the shark who got hacked got 12,000 views. The second Hex birthday live stream, you know, got 12,000 views. So there's I'm predicting this one, not as many people are going to watch it and be interested, but that's okay, because this is advanced stuff. This is your second PhD in crypto. Got to stay healthy for the Quattro Cinco stakes. That's right. eHex, Hex, PLS, and PLSX. Quadfecta. And then, you know, I'm not that interested currently in the Hex or the Pulse farming token. But at the end of the day, I want everybody to realize that all of these tokens, the farming token, PLSX, that, you know, is making money off fees through an admin key free buy and burn program, the first of its kind, operating on PulseChain, which is having all these liquidity pools that for the first time the system stays copied over, and everybody gets a copy of their coins on both sides. There might be new bridge technology at play, and Dev Ruth will possibly be weighing in for the Hex conference about another Bridge Bytes episode. Yeah, there are actually going to be 5 tokens created by Richard Hart, and they're all, I believe, going to popularize Hex and make mad gains. Hit the like button. Would you accept Hex for payment when we all need counseling on these mad gains? I would prefer to do it for free and it not be medical or, you know, not be the regulated type of counseling, but being peer support and general education. That, because it's I don't need a license in your state to tell you how I'm improving my mental health. As long as you understand what the rules are, and you know, I want to have more people on the channel to talk about how they're coping and what their strategies are to help others. And I would ask that any sort of like payment or goodwill that you would get out of that, or the value that you get that you would be willing to pay for, that you would pay that forward in a special way to your to the people that you can spread it to. And so for a lot of people, the contribution that they can make now is, as like corny and overplayed as it is, it's to hit the like and subscribe button and to invite somebody else to subscribe to the channel who you care about, and you know, who might be a good match for the advanced topics that we talk about. And I would like to make that easier to like onboard people to the channel, but not lose the smart crowd of people who want to keep learning more. I hesitate to switch to like only onboarding content for beginners, because the advanced people need, you know, it's just as important that the advanced people keep growing and learning and don't get bored and dump their bags on everybody's heads. So the more we can pay it forward, that's what I'm doing. You know, I didn't invent Hex. I had cryptocurrency as my hobby, and I wanted to learn more about psychology and mental health and how finance plays into that, and got lucky to find Hex through Bitcoin free claim and to see some of the technical merit, and then get lucky to have so much value given to me for free by the community. And so if I can pay back some of that value and some of these mad gains, and then people can keep paying it forward, that is the type of network effect that is going to spread more altruism than taking advantage of people. And it, I hope, changes the financial environment of everyone to be more healthy. That I think that so my catchphrase has always been, or kind of my title is, a programmable money advocate. Programmable health, or mental health and programmable money advocate, because I believe that everybody needs money and everybody needs mental health, so they should be programmed to, you know, money should not be so unhealthy. The incentives and the game theory that underlies fiat money is that causes people to be a worse version of themselves, in my opinion. When people are financially stressed and robbed from, when the technology that's created by everyone in the world is inflated away and stolen, people don't blame, people have an attribution error, and they don't blame the psychopaths that are running the corrupt system. They blame themselves, or the people who are immediately around them, or the people who are the most different from them, who are the closest to them. And so you see like all this violence and politics and hate and fear in the world, and that is a perpetuating cycle that I think is not helped by the monetary environment. And so imagine a world where people were operating from abundance, where people were not feeling robbed from, and that would, I think, build communities in ways that is really limited right now to people who may also have an unhealthy relationship with money. Like, I would say most people who have money these days have an unhealthy relationship with it, and that the entire system is like filled with bad incentives. So that's what cryptocurrency was like touted as. That was the cool story, was fix the money, fix the world. And so we need to understand how Hex fixes the money better than Bitcoin does, and that's abundantly clear. Maddie is fudding himself. You are the man, Maddie. Thank you for all you have done and do a lot of work you put in. My pleasure. Talking about game theory, it's super exciting. I love talking to people at the meetups. I've gone to 5 different Hex meetups now on the US road tour. Shout out to Kryptosparbach. I get excited by explaining, learning from people who have watched all the hours on the channel and seeing people's reactions in real life. And then today's episode is about sharing everything that I've been learning from others and that I've learned through my own study. Oh shit, forgot to liked now. Very good, very good. You consistently knock it out of the park, Maddie. Bravo. Hey, thank you. Onboarding is very important. Outbound messaging is critical. And so the Hex conference is designed at the very beginning to be no coiner friendly. We are going to have some videos that help explain what is Hex, and that should give people a friendly introduction. And that's going to happen after the 9 OG hexagons go in and introduce everything. And so we're going to, this is not the version of the schedule that has the names written in it. You go to the Twitter thread, it does. If you go to hexconference.com, I can pull it up now. And so we're wanting to have in this first hour, as an introduction for 20 minutes to 40 minutes is going to be hopefully Hexologist, Motley the Investor, Big K, Funding Jim, Freddie Quotes, Johnny Chaos, Cabana, Huddle Dog, Kryptosparbach. And so you're going to see 9 people on screen who are all excited, known members of the community, people who are very professional and who have been trained to have their cameras set up so that everybody's paying attention to each other. And it's not going to be your office Zoom call where people don't even know where the camera is. And it's going to be a show of force having these awesome hexagons on screen all at once at the beginning. And then we'll play some pre-recorded videos that explain what is Hex. And so even as a brand new user or somebody who has been in the community for all the years, you are going to be very excited by the beginning of the Hex conference, and it'll just keep getting better with the lineup that we have. So I've covered that in separate streams, so I'm not going to beat that to death, especially because we'll probably cover it on CoinCang. So to wrap up this episode of Amazing Predictions, I predict the price of Hex will keep going up because but it will continue to be extremely volatile. And I don't know whether we're going to hit 10 cents before we hit $1. But I do know that over time, the use case is getting stronger because more people are discovering Hex. And there are so many smart hexagons who have gotten rich from Hex, and they're smarter than I am. They're spending their time developing the game theory that it's going to take to make the next thing more popular that will bring more users to Hex. Because once people trust Pulse and have had mad gains there, they will be incentivized to take a second look at Hex and to really start to dig in and understand it. And so that's something to look forward to have really more cooperation in crypto, to have less corruption in crypto. And so I think 2022 is going to be an incredible year. I think we're going to see lots of famous people get involved with Hex. We're going to see some major ups and downs, and I think that there will be way more ups because of everybody in the entire Ethereum ecosystem getting an airdrop and having something to do with it on a network that is technologically superior and that vampire attacks. So with that being said, I want to finally explain all of the work I've been putting in to what's here to look forward to on the upcoming live streams. So I'm going to share the screen here so you can see the beautiful thumbnails that I've spent forever working on. So right now we're finishing up this stream. A guy with DeLorean predicts every crypto in 2022. You should not consider this financial advice, but I did go to the future and I'm just saying. And then the upcoming live streams here, this is going to be amazing. I believe that Alec Torelli, the professional poker player, had the best interview with Richard Hart that I've ever seen. Sure, there were some that were way more intense, like Peter McCormick or like the Tone Vase lawyers on the Hex launch day. But hey, this is where Richard really covered everything in a very succinct, very detailed manner. This is a 2-hour live stream I would share with anybody that wants to understand Hex. I put the link in the description for this show. So if you go to this show, you can see it's going to be myself and Kareem and Alex Torelli and Wave 3 TV for a special episode kind of leading up to the Hex conference here in a week and a half. And so beautiful, beautiful thumbnail. Can't believe that I made it myself. And then there's down here in the show notes, you can see here under the special guest, Alec Torelli, I have a link to the video that he did with Richard, and that's his associate there, who is shown on screen as well. So that's definitely something to look forward to. I'm sorry, I keep thinking today's Monday. That's going to be on Tuesday for Quant Gang at the normal time. And then I will do the 60th episode of Hex Therapy Live on Thursday. And then by the end of the year, we're going to have, I know, some live streams from the community, like a 24-hour live stream that'll be on another channel. And then this stream will be moved whenever the PulseX sacrifice starts. And then here's the placeholder for Quant Gang every week. But then the following week on January 6th will be the first day of the Hex conference. And then we'll have 4 days of Hex conference. And then on January 15th, the following weekend, there is a Sense Foundation donor appreciation event. And I have to see if I'm allowed to like live stream that, but it's going to be a virtual meetup. You don't have to have a VR thing, but it's some sort of VR thing. And you might have gotten an email about it if you sacrificed 2 cents. But even if I can't stream the actual thing, they're going to be streaming 2 times during the day, in the morning and the evening for the international crowd. And I'm going to do like a pre-show or a post-show and that sort of thing just to cover the event, because I want people to be able to come to this channel to, you know, see some of these important things that are going on that are related to what we're all working towards. So hit the like and subscribe button, invite somebody who you care about to get involved with Hex, and to go to allmylinks.com/allin for my YouTube page and all the other social media places you can follow me. hexconference.com and all my links. There we go. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and have a happy holiday season. Stake wisely, my friends, and peace out until next time.
It's from Maddie Allen of Hex Therapy Live. I like Maddie. Maddie tries to make the world a healthier place. He's a mental health professional. He's done research. There's nothing that a human being could do better than try and heal his fellow man.
Thanks for joining, everyone.